Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really immersing ourselves in something quite different. It's less about traditional research, more about human resilience, I'd say.
That sounds about right. We're diving into a really complex question, aren't we? What actually happens when, these really meticulous life plans, plans made by highly capable people, just completely fall apart?
Exactly. And crucially, how does a strong social network, a really powerful one function, almost like, well, like critical infrastructure during that kind of crisis?
Right. So, our mission today is to really analyze those dynamics resilience, the loss of professional identity, these huge career shifts. And we're doing it by looking closely at two people, James Graham and Ray.
Okay.
We'll examine how things like chronic illness and unresolved grief force them to just abandon years of careful planning. And instead, they have to rely on this incredibly loyal network to handle, information overload, massive stress, and make these absolutely life-altering decisions.
Okay, let's unpack this. This sort of high-stakes detour they're both forced onto. We should start with James Graham. He's 35, and his whole sense of self, his identity, it was built on physical capability, on purposeful action.
He was a construction professional, spent 6 really tough years building clinics way out in remote Zaire, part of a mission.
Right, so his life was defined by being useful, by strength, by achieving the mission's goals.
But that life just comes to a sudden, grinding halt. He's forced back to the U.S. on what he calls, pretty grimly, a medical furlough.
Yeah.
He's got this undiagnosed illness, they think maybe from an insect bite or something out there, and it manifests as this just crippling joint pain and stiffness.
And the description used is really striking.
Yeah.
At 35, James moves like an old man.
Yeah, and the real cruelty of it, the core of his crisis, is that his professional identity, his whole sense of self-worth is completely tied up in that physical labor.
You can't swing a hammer anymore.
No. Can't carry heavy equipment, can't manage crews on site without just intense discomfort, maybe even agony. So that physical loss isn't just an inconvenience, it's an existential crisis for him. It basically robs him of the only identity he's known for, almost a decade.
Yeah, a huge chunk of his adult life.
Yeah.
And then, sort of contracting James's physical breakdown, we have Ray, or Rachel. She's described as a financial market genius, the ultimate practical planner.
Yeah.
The picture of professional success.
Absolutely. Known for managing assets incredibly well. We're talking about $25 million under her management.
And consistently beating the S&P 500 benchmark for 7 straight years.
7 years, well, that's almost unheard of. That's truly elite territory in the financial world.
But Ray's crisis isn't physical. It's driven by this profound emotional trauma and the burnout that follows. Her fiancé and business partner, Leo, died suddenly about 18 months before our story really picks up.
Right. And Leo was the energy in their partnership, wasn't he? The risk taker, the visionary. Ray was the analyst, the cautious planner, the one making sure the numbers worked.
So her coping mechanism after his death,
Yeah.
it's actually quite destructive. She's just buried herself completely in what was essentially Leo's dream job.
Trying to fill his role, his massive operational void, just through sheer effort, working insane hours, basically running on fumes.
So there we have it. The core conflict is set up. Two people who are, objectively masters in their fields. James the builder, Ray the financial wizard.
Right.
But both are dealing with this harsh collision. Their careful plans versus a reality they just cannot control. James is literally broken by his body.
And Ray is broken by grief and this deep emotional fatigue. It's like this mandatory detour where the very things that made them strong, their professional identities, are now the source of their pain.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The structures that gave them meaning are now sort of preventing them from moving forward, from healing.
Exactly. If James can't build, who is he? That's the question he's facing.
And for Ray, if she stops trading, if she steps back from Leo's dream, is she somehow betraying his legacy?
Yeah. That's the heart of this identity crisis, the siege they're both under. We really need to dig into that next.
Okay, let's start with James. The builder's dilemma, as the outline calls it. His professional identity is just so tightly wound up with physical competence. Being sidelined isn't just, oh, I need a new job.
No, it's much deeper. It feels like an affront to his moral obligation, his identity as a mission worker, as someone who does things, who builds things. He hates this forced desk job. He feels useless.
And the symptoms are described really vividly. They're specific, relentless.
Yeah. The pain makes even simple movements stiff and difficult. His spine aches constantly. His wrists hurt so badly that gripping a hammer, or really any tool, managing any physical task, causes him to wince. It's immediate pain.
And the doctors? They don't have clear answers, do they?
No, just this vague hope. They think this bug, whatever it is, will eventually run its course.
Which must be agonizing.
Totally, because James is losing time. He's losing his sense of self-worth, just waiting for a cure that might never actually arrive.
That ambiguity, that not knowing.
Yeah.
It's critical, isn't it? It leaves him stuck in this limbo. He can't commit to staying in the States, but he can't plan to go back either.
Right. And we see this tension really come to a head in this truly devastating moment when he tries to go back to construction work. He attempts to work alongside his old partner, Kevin.
He goes to push through it.
Yeah. Hoping, I guess, that sheer willpower can somehow overcome what his body is telling him. But the sources detail this moment of just crippling pain.
There's a pain score mentioned, right? A 2 out of 10.
Yes, a 210. Which sounds low, maybe, if you're just looking at the number, but the source clarifies what that score means for him in that context. It means the pain is so bad I don't want to move.
Ah, okay. So it's not a measure of intensity in the usual sense, but a measure of functional limit.
Exactly. It signifies the absolute limit of what he can endure and still, even pretend to function on a demanding construction site. It's the moment his body basically throws up a huge, unavoidable stop sign, a professional red light.
And that realization that he can't even operate at that baseline physical level.
It leads him to this brutal, undeniable conclusion. He wouldn't be going back to Africa. That temporary furlough, it's now permanent exile from his life's calling.
He knows he can't pull his weight out there.
Right. Especially not in a remote location where if he fails, it could put other people in danger. His sense of responsibility wouldn't allow it.
Meanwhile, Ray's experiencing her own crisis of purpose. But it's more insidious. It's kind of hidden behind her incredible success.
Definitely. On the outside, she's excelling, killing it by any objective measure. But internally, she's just dying of burnout and unresolved grief.
She's compensating for Leo's death, as we said.
Yeah.
Trying to be both the analytical brain and the aggressive, risk-taking energy that Leo brought to the table.
And the cost is staggering, averaging nearly 65 hours a week, 64.9 to be precise.
Wow.
Month after month. That kind of pace leads to this deep, profound exhaustion. And the sources mention her appetite that is still non-existent. That points to the physical toll, the way stress is just eating away at her.
What's really interesting here, I think, is the conflict between her skill set and her actual desire. Her inherent nature.
Absolutely. Ray is naturally brilliant at the analysis part, figuring out company growth potential, asset use, long-term market share. That's her sweet spot, her zone of genius.
But the other side of the job, the constant fast-paced risk-taking, the trading.
That was Leo's passion, and for her it's described as nerve-wracking. She recognizes, intellectually at least, that this huge career, this firm, it was really Leo's dream, a dream she just kind of borrowed, initially out of loyalty and then out of necessity after he died.
So she's trapped. She's in this highly profitable, high-performing job that fundamentally demands a personality style, an approach to risk that she just doesn't naturally possess.
Yeah. How does she even manage to stay functional when she's clearly operating against her own grain like that?
Well, she makes a very strategic move. She seems to recognize the danger of mixing her thoughtful, analytical work with the pressure of instant trading decisions.
Okay, what does she do?
She physically separates her workspaces. She sets up what she calls a war room.
A war room. Sounds intense.
Yeah, strictly for the high-speed trading, the instant decisions. And then she has her separate private office for the planning, the deep analysis, the stuff she's truly comfortable with.
Ah, that's clever. It's like a practical compromise. It allows her to maintain some control, manage her own need for analysis, while still doing the fast action stuff the job requires, sort of mitigating the immediate risk.
It's a fascinating decision, isn't it? Like corporate architecture driven by psychological need. She's trying to optimize for her strengths while managing the risks of Leo's more aggressive style.
But she knows deep down it's not sustainable, right?
Seems like it. She recognizes her heart just isn't in it anymore, which is what leads her to start thinking about finding a new partner, maybe someone more like Leo, or perhaps even selling the entire business.
So if we connect the dots here, both James and Ray, despite their different circumstances, are facing the exact same unavoidable challenge.
Which is?
To survive, to move forward, they have to abandon the core function of their current identity. James has to stop being the physical builder.
And Ray has to stop executing Leo's high-risk strategy and finally start prioritizing her own well-being, her own path.
But giving up those identities, walking away from who you thought you were, that takes immense resources, emotional, logistical, financial.
Which brings us perfectly to the next crucial element, the support system. The critical infrastructure that actually allows these kinds of massive pivots to happen, their friendship network.
Yes. And this is where the story gets really interesting, I think, because when your whole life plan collapses, you don't just need a shoulder to cry on. You need a system.
A system that can handle crisis logistics, legal complexities, financial stability, the works.
Exactly. And James and Ray, they have access to what the sources call the unbreakable network.
This core group, Ray, Lace, Dave, and originally Leo, of course, they met back at Northwestern University.
Right. And the description of their bond is key. It's characterized by unbreakable loyalty. And this profound operational principle, the common, what I have, is yours use of their time, resources, and talent.
That's not just friendship. That's like a strategic alliance.
Totally. Let's break down the roles, because they seem quite specialized within the group. You have Lace. She works in law and consulting.
Right.
And she seems to be the constant emotional monitor, the boundary enforcer almost. She doesn't just ask Ray if she's okay. She insists Ray take a vacation. She sets up a bowling league to force social interaction, to pull Ray out of her work bathe.
So she's focused on the group's emotional health and cohesion.
Yeah, and sometimes through, like, mischievous stuff, too. The sources mention her and Dave putting ice down someone's back just to break the tension.
Yeah.
Maintaining morale, you know?
Okay, and then there's Dave, the lawyer.
Dave is the logistical lifesaver. We see these acts of just sheer devotion, like delivering chili dogs to an airport during a layover, which is amazing.
That's dedication.
But his real value in this crisis context lies in his professional expertise. He holds power of attorney for Ray's extremely complex financial business. That's a massive level of professional trust right there.
Huge.
And what's critical is how Dave uses his professional capital, his contacts, his legal skills to solve their personal problems.
Like what?
Well, he leverages his network to arrange chartered flights to get Ray back immediately after Leo's death. He coordinates the logistics for that restorative trip to San Diego for her. He's not just being a supportive friend, he's acting like the chief operational officer for the group's personal crises.
That really drives home that infrastructure idea. They're using professional-level skills, legal, financial, consulting, to literally maintain the stability of their friends' lives during emergencies.
Highly functional people creating a highly functional crisis management team. It's quite something.
And this professional infrastructure, it actually extends its reach internationally, even before James formally meets most of them.
Yeah.
There's that origin story of how James and Ray first connected, indirectly.
Right. James's mission team out in Zaire apparently knew Ray as Rachel the Angel.
Rachel the Angel.
Why? Because Ray, using James's sister Patricia as a kind of logistical go-between, was sending these packages out to Zaire twice a month.
Wow.
And these weren't just, personal letters. They included things like Chicago Bulls game tapes, a connection to home, specific items James's men actually needed, notes and supplies that were described as being like water to his thirsty men in that remote, difficult environment.
So that's Ray, the meticulous planner, using her logistical skills again. This time, to boost morale and provide tangible support for people she'd never even met, just because they were connected to James.
Exactly. This pre-existing indirect bond, this history of practical support, it made James's integration into the group seamless when he finally came home, sick and demoralized.
They didn't treat him like a newcomer or a charity case?
No, the friends intentionally brought him into the team, not just as someone to support, but as a vital, respected part of the support system.
How did they do that?
They immediately started seeking out his expertise. Suddenly, James, the guy who felt useless because he couldn't swing a hammer, he becomes the chief arbitrator for group disagreements.
Okay.
He's the expert on cars, on construction principles, on managing large organizations based on his mission experience. They actively sought his input.
So they gave him a role, a way to contribute his skills again.
Precisely. And they also showered him with gifts and access. Things like a health club membership, the private contact information for top doctors, White Sox tickets. This wasn't just random kindness. It felt like a strategic effort to give him a renewed sense of value, purpose, and access to resources that could help mitigate his pain and isolation.
And the network's commitment, it proved totally unconditional, didn't it? When James finally hits that wall, accepts that Africa is impossible, the ultimate loss of his identity, they don't back away.
Not at all. They immediately pivot. Dave, the lawyer, starts thinking about State Department contacts he might have that could be useful. Lace offers connections to international banking, maybe for future projects.
And Ray.
Ray uses her foundation contacts to start vetting doctors, not for his current illness, but for the future clinics James now dreams of establishing in the U.S.
But they weren't just supporting his old dream of Africa. They were instantly ready to redirect their massive collective resources to support his new life plan wherever it took him.
Exactly. They were prepared to extend their network globally, if needed, to follow him. It confirmed their loyalty was to James, the person, not just to the mission he represented.
Which just underscores the whole point, really. When James's carefully constructed life plan collapsed, the network didn't just catch him.
No, they actively started helping him forge a new, viable dream on his terms using their combined strength.
This incredible infrastructure, this safety net, is precisely what gives Ray the breathing room, the space, to start reclaiming her own life and setting some crucial boundaries.
Yeah, let's dive into that. We know Ray's professional life is grinding her down, but the emotional toll, the grief, it's tied up in something else too, something that seems secondary on the surface. She's writing a novel.
Right. And she's pretty far along, 300 pages already.
This novel, it's clearly much more than just a hobby for her. It seems like a necessary act of therapeutic closure.
How so?
She wanted to finish it and dedicate it to Leo as a final, maybe more complete way of saying goodbye than just, packing away his things.
Okay, that makes sense.
And she also recognized that the sheer effort involved deserved some payback. She wanted to see it published. So the writing represents her own creation, something separate from Leo's business legacy, and it's deeply tied to her emotional healing and finding her own future purpose.
But there's that conflict again, isn't there, between this personal passion project and her professional responsibilities, especially for someone like Ray, the practical planner.
Oh, it's brutal for her. She's acutely aware that finding the time, about 6 hours a week, she estimates finding that time to write just burned her clients. That's the phrase used. It cut into her essential overall analysis time.
For a top-tier financial manager, admitting that you're actively sacrificing some professional quality time for a personal need, that must feel like a huge transgression, source of guilt.
Definitely. Yet at the same time, the sources are really clear. The writing actually made her feel better. It was actively preventing complete burnout.
So it was like this psychological necessity that she felt guilty about pursuing because it meant prioritizing her own healing.
Exactly. Which raises the question, how does she justify that trade-off internally? How does she reconcile it? She needed someone who understood, truly understood, the necessity of setting absolute limits.
And that person turns out to be James.
Yes, because James has been forcibly taught about limits by his own body in the harshest way possible.
He gives her some crucial advice, doesn't he? Based on his own hard-won experience.
He does. He draws directly from his own forced medical situation. He says something like, "My body no longer allows me to exceed my limits. I wish it would do it in a somewhat less drastic fashion."
Wow, that's raw.
It is. And based on that, he advises Ray to set some limits, do what you can, and walk away from it.
That statement feels really profound coming from him. He's basically articulating the agony of having your limits enforced violently by illness.
Right. He knows firsthand that ignoring those limits, pushing past them, leads to immediate, undeniable physical catastrophe for him. So his advice to Ray isn't just a casual suggestion like, hey, maybe take it easy.
No, it's more like a survival instruction.
Yeah. Exactly. You must accept your physical and emotional ceiling, or eventually your body or your mind will enforce it for you, maybe catastrophically.
And that perspective, coming from James, who had lost so much physically, it seems to catalyze a really deep personal realization for Ray.
It does. She finally concludes that her passion for the financial firm, for that specific work, disappeared because before Leo died, she had already unconsciously shifted gears inside.
Shifted gears towards what?
Towards planning for a marriage and a family. That life she wanted with Leo.
So the drive for the business was tied to that future plan with him.
Seems so. She recognizes she still wants a job, she's good at it, but not at the expense of her writing, her friends, and potentially that future family life, even without Leo.
This isn't just about avoiding burnout, then. It's a fundamental shift in her values, her priorities.
Yes. She realizes she'd been postponing the life she truly wanted, one focused more on connection, creation, maybe family. She'd been postponing that in favor of maintaining Leo's ambition, his legacy.
So setting these boundaries, carving out time for writing, It isn't a failure of professionalism for her. It's actually the first major step in putting her own life, her own desires first,
Yeah.
finally starting to separate her identity from Leo's dream.
And this new alignment of her priorities, this shift, it unfortunately sets the stage for the devastating emotional climax of the story, where all these limitations, physical, emotional, are tested right to their absolute breaking point.
Things come to a head with James, right? He has a serious relapse.
Yeah. After maybe a brief period where things seem slightly better, his chronic pain comes roaring back. Hits a 6 out of 10 on that scale and quickly escalates to excruciating.
He's forced to use a cane again.
Yes. And the sheer relentless effort required just for basic tasks, getting out of bed, moving across a room, it's just wearing him down, not just physically, but mentally.
This puts him in a really fragile psychological state.
Deeply fragile. He sees Ray, who is already exhausted from her insane 65-hour work weeks, now also worrying constantly about him, adding his burden to hers.
And he draws this devastating conclusion based on that.
He does. It's a kind of self-sacrificing conclusion. He decides he is no longer willing to have her life limited by his.
Because his identity as the provider, the strong builder, is so ingrained.
Exactly. He sees himself purely as a burden now. He can't do the physical things, mow the lawn, carry groceries. He feels he can't provide the basic energy and responsibility necessary for a marriage as he defines it.
So in this misguided attempt to protect her future, her writing, the children he knows she wants.
He tells her they have to break up. Just be friends. He insists he doesn't have the energy, the capacity for a relationship. He's doing it in his mind for her own good, to set her free from his limitations.
Oh, that's painful. Pushing her away out of a sense of, brokenness.
Yeah, it's the ultimate act of self-sacrifice, but it's rooted entirely in his perceived physical inadequacy.
But Ray's already running on empty. That existing fatigue, it proves catastrophic.
It does. Driving home one night in freezing drizzle, the sources link it directly. The deep exhaustion from her work hours, compounded by the emotional turmoil of James basically ending things, it leads straight to a car accident.
Her driver's side door is hit. And she's badly injured.
Life-threateningly injured. A fracture in the back of her neck, high up above the C4 vertebra. It causes immediate paralysis because of the swelling around the spinal cord.
Paralysis.
Yes. Plus broken ribs, severe bruising. She's completely reliant on a respirator just to breathe.
My goodness. The diagnosis must have been terrifying.
Vague and terrifying. Basically, take it day by day. Don't assume the worst or the best. Just wait and see.
And James, how does he react?
He's immediately hit with this wave of immense guilt. He realizes that his attempt to protect her, his self-sacrifice, combined with the stress of his illness, it directly contributed to her fatigue and ultimately to this horrific accident.
So he stays by her side.
Days on end. He sits with her in the ICU, basically ignoring his own excruciating pain. And this tragedy, seeing her fight for her life like that, it forces his ultimate realization.
What does he realize?
He understands that his whole reason for breaking up his physical limitations was just meaningless in the face of this. He realizes profoundly that love really did make the limitations irrelevant.
Wow.
And in that moment, he confesses everything, tells her, I love you, everything is going to be all right.
That's a fundamental shift, isn't it? He finally accepts that his physical state, the cane, the pain, it's secondary to his commitment to her.
Absolutely. But what's truly revealing, almost poetic in a way, is the evidence that Ray had already made these crucial shifts herself, independently, even before the accident forced the issue.
Oh, we know that.
Well, while James is at Ray's place, gathering things for her hospital stay, he finds her Bible. It's open to a specific passage, Psalms 7.4 to 5.5. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Okay, that's significant.
But even more critically, he notices something missing from her bedside table. The picture of Leo and the engagement ring Leo had given her. They'd sat there for 18 months.
And they're gone.
They're gone. She had already packed them away. That signals she had already begun to accept the past, let go, and was ready for a new future before the accident ever happened.
So the accident didn't force her decision, it just interrupted the process she'd already started.
Exactly. And her professional shift was just as decisive, apparently. Once she starts recovering, begins to communicate more, she reveals something crucial to James.
What's that?
She tells him she had already planned to sell the financial business. She'd gotten as far as having a contract drawn up.
Wow. So her heart really had gone out of it.
Completely. Her passion for that high-pressure work had faded. She was already actively choosing her relationship with James, her writing, her own path, over maintaining that career legacy.
So the accident and the long recovery period that followed, it essentially became this crucible. It burned away their remaining ties to those old professional identities and obligations.
Perfectly put. James finally, fully accepts that Africa is impossible. He starts making concrete plans for a new life in the States, buys a 2-story house with an acre of land, a place built for a settled family life.
He finds new work.
Yeah, he accepts architecture consulting work. And reflecting Ray's desire for family, and maybe his own now too, he starts talking about adoption. He wants 4 children.
4. Okay. He's planning a future.
A completely different future than the one he'd envisioned for years. They both recognized, through all this trauma, that the life they truly needed, the one they desired, was defined by intimacy, shared commitment, building something together, not by singular professional ambition.
So what does all this tell us? When we bring it back to the big picture, the themes of resilience, crisis, limitations.
Well, I think the core insight here is that real strength isn't necessarily about overcoming or eliminating your limitations. Sometimes it can't be done.
Right. James's illness wasn't going away.
Exactly. So resilience becomes about accepting those limitations, integrating them, and building a shared future despite them, maybe even because of them.
The narrative really shows that James's physical limits, his chronic pain, they became secondary to the level of commitment he was willing to make, giving up his life's work in Africa for Ray.
And Ray's realization, that profound moment where she understood love, made his pain irrelevant to their relationship. That validates their commitment from the other side. She chose him, needing support and all. He chose her, fragile recovery and all.
They shifted their definition of self, didn't they? Moved from defining themselves by what they did, building clinics, managing millions, to defining themselves by who they were together.
Precisely.
So what's the final status update? Where do we leave these two incredible figures?
Ray begins the long, arduous process of physical therapy. There's hope. Small signs like moving her toes, regaining some feeling in her hands. She embraces that challenge, focusing on rebuilding her own physical strength. James accepts his new reality. He's an architecture consultant now, and showing that practical planner side, maybe Ray-influenced, he proposes marriage. But with this incredible confidence and persistence.
Absolutely.
He books a chapel, not just for one date, but for the last Saturday of every month for the rest of the year until she says yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's commitment. And does she?
She agrees and confirms, yes, she is definitely selling the business. They found their true purpose wasn't in that individual professional glory they'd chased for so long.
It was in supporting each other, creating a future together.
Exactly. They both spent years chasing one specific established identity. James chasing the promise of the mission field, Ray maintaining Leo's financial firm, only to discover, the hard way, that the life they truly desired, the one that felt authentic, was the one they'd kept postponing in favor of those external goals and obligations.
Which really leaves us, and you, the listener, with this final thought to chew on. A bit of a provocation, maybe.
Go for it.
Both James and Ray spent years committed to an identity that ultimately served their past, whether that was a past dream, like James's Africa mission, or a past relationship's legacy, like Ray and Leo's firm. They weren't serving their future desire for genuine connection, for family, for a different kind of life. So the question for you is, what priorities are you setting today? What career goal? What sense of obligation? What professional identity might you be clinging to that your future self might actually regret postponing? Postponing, perhaps, in favor of a life built more solidly on unconditional commitment, shared experience, and genuine desire.
That's definitely something to mull over. That's your deep dive homework.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of resilience, collapsing plans, and radical change.
It was fascinating. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.